Hello, bonjour, and welcome to your new Bonner Wine Club video. I'm your host, Julien, and yes, it's that time again. The holiday season is coming up very soon and very fast, as it always does. Here I'm going to give you some tips and ideas, some suggestions on how to pick your wines for the holiday celebrations, what styles you may consider serving or exploring with your guests, how and when. As always, to keep things simple, I'll break things down into short chapters for you, French style 3-course menu today. We're going to be looking at the wines for appetizers and entrees, maybe even wines for those late afternoon gatherings where we share and enjoy being together with family and friends for long periods of times. Then we'll look at some suggestions for your mains, and of course we'll finish with dessert. How does the menu sound to you today? Let's go! My fellow wine-loving friends, Julien here. Before we get started with the video, there is something that you have to know about. This video was made possible by the Bonner Private Wine Partnership, and the reason I work with them is not just because it's been called the most unique wine club in America, but because they truly love the wines that they choose for you. Founded by Will Bonner, the partnership is a small group of wine lovers who have come together to import excellent small batch wines that might otherwise get completely overlooked by large importers. They get them. Right now you can get your hands on 3 rare extreme altitude red wines from Argentina, from some of the purest, highest vineyards in the entire world, way up in the Andes Mountains. No middlemen, no additive packed supermarket wines here, no inflated costs. Plus you'll get exclusive access to more wine education videos from me, just like the one you're about to watch, to make sure you become an educated wine connoisseur. So make sure to check out the link in the video description to see if you want to become partner in something truly special in the world of wine. But for now, back to your video. Of course, one of the great joys of the holiday season are those long afternoon gatherings before Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. Days are short this time of year and it's cold outside, so we often like to stay inside chatting, preparing dinner, watching football, whatever, sharing a few snacks and a few drinks. For this, and I think it's the same for most entree dishes, you want lighter styles of wines with lower alcohol levels and mild fruity flavors to make everyone joyful without making them sleepy or too enthusiastic too early. Before the meal or early into the meal with the entrees, you also want to keep everyone's taste buds quite aware, rather fresh, with relatively mild yet joyful fruity flavors again. More like a mise en bouche, as we say in French, a palate teaser if you wish, just to tease and awake your taste buds before the main. Of course, white wines are an obvious choice here, as they are lighter in body, lower in alcohol, and they don't have tannins at all, so they are easier and softer on your palate and on your taste buds. For very light white wines, look out for, of course, those Pinot Grigios from Italy. Those are very floral and fruity. They are quite low in alcohol, yet lively and acidic. Really easy and pleasing for most palates. In a similar style, but from Portugal, look out for the Vinho Verde. Those will have even lighter flavor. They are quite neutral in flavors, really. They're less fruity than the Grigios, but they're also even lighter in alcohol generally. If you want more powerful white wines, yet still with a good palate teasing zinginess, go for those Sauvignon Blancs. Preferably the unoaked type of Sauvignon Blanc from cooler climates. So you'll have great options from France, from the Loire Valley, like the Sancerre or the Touraine, but also from New Zealand that makes super fragrant, super zesty Sauvignon Blanc wines, or also from cooler parts of California, like Santa Barbara. We talked about those style of Sauvignon Blanc in one of my last videos where we compared them with Chardonnay and how those two styles kind of differ. ask your wine merchant for this light unoaked style of Sauvignon Blanc and look at the back of the wine label. Anything above 13% for me at this stage for this lighter style will be a little bit too bold. For an option from Burgundy that's not your Chardonnay, look out for this Aligoté. That's a grape that makes very vibrant acidic white wines. Over there in Burgundy, they serve this with the crème de cassis, or the black currant liqueur, a little bit like a cocktail. It's absolutely delicious, bringing back some great memories, but getting a little bit distracted here. Then of course the rosés are always going to be a great option before a meal. I guess any type of rosé will do, but generally, to summarize rosé for you, the deeply colored rosés are likely to be bolder, fruitier, more intense in flavors, and sometimes they might be a little bit sweet as well, while the pale ones, such as this one or the ones from Provence, will be generally drier and a little bit more restrained. So pick the style that you prefer between those two, but again, keep it below 13% alcohol, I would advise. The rosé that you received as part of your French wine selection, that rosé from Languedoc, will be absolutely perfect. If you haven't drunk it yet, it's absolutely delicious. Why not having it during the holidays? Now for reds, for this specific moment before a meal, well, two main styles come to mind. First, you'll find the light, cool climate Pinot Noirs, because they're light in body and they are fruity, they have relatively low tannins, and they're not too high in alcohol. Of course, there's plenty of those made in the US as well as there is in Burgundy, France. So go for the Bourgogne Pinot Noir here if you're going for the French version. They are a little bit more, well, quite a lot more affordable, and they're lighter as well in style more than the prestigious village ones like the Vosne Romanés that can be quite expensive and that are bigger and bolder. But some very good light Pinots come out of Marlborough in New Zealand as well. The second style of light and fruity red here is going to be Beaujolais, or some other red wines made from the same grape, that is the Gamay grape. Some are made in the US in this style now. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago we talked about Beaujolais Nouveau in a video. Those are light, approachable and fruity, very crowd pleasers of wines. The Cabernet Franc that you received as part of your Bonner Wine Club's French selection, because it is in this fruity light style of red wine, is also going to be perfect here. Now we need to talk about sparkling wines. Where are my sparkling wines? Here. Of course, you have to have some sparkling wines during the holidays. It is a very interesting topic that deserves its own little chapter, even though I think it's still part of this entrees and appetizers part of my video, as I shall demonstrate. So let's talk about bubbles specifically for a minute here. If you're into sparkling wines, or you know that your guest will like some bubbles, as they are pretty probably likely to be, here are my thoughts. If you want some light and inoffensive bubbles for your long gatherings and your buffet of entrees, I tend to think that there's nothing more suited than Prosecco, the sparkling from Italy, or the spumante as the Italians call it. And that's exactly why Prosecco is so popular now everywhere around the world, because it's affordable, because it's easy. There's not a lot to it in terms of flavor and taste if you ask me, but at least it's simple to approach and to enjoy for anyone. So people don't feel guilty with a Prosecco of sipping it a little bit too fast, because it's cheap, because it's simple and quite low in alcohol. If you do want to stay on a Prosecco but want something a little bit more special and refined, buy a Prosecco Conegliano Valdobbiadene. You'll find more nuances and a better balance overall than with your ordinary cheap Prosecco, which this is. A good alternative would be a Cava from Spain. That's made really similarly to French champagne, but for a fraction of the price, and it's generally a little simpler too than French champagne, but excellent nonetheless, excellent value for the price. Excellent alternatives from France are going to be the Crémant wines. Those are alternatives to champagne wines made in France the exact same way than champagne, but in different regions. So you're going to be finding the Crémants from Bourgogne, from Alsace, from Bordeaux, from the Loire, and even other places. just a fraction of the price. You can find excellent créments for $10–15, perhaps 20. At $20 a crément is going to be fantastic. It's going to compete with a very good champagne at that price. Now those were for the simple, quaffable sparklings to have nonchalantly before your meal. If you want to have a good champagne or an expensive bubbly, because hey, it's the holidays and you know, we've worked hard all year, we want to celebrate. I'd certainly recommend to have your fancy, expensive, refined champagne before the main rather than with dessert. So you can actually taste its subtle nuances and enjoy, you know, you've paid a sum of money for it. A lot of people have worked hard to make these refined bubble. You might as well make the most of it. Too many champagnes are somewhat wasted or not appreciated enough after meals or with dessert when people are too full or too sleepy to really enjoy it. If you want to enjoy your Moutard champagne that you had as part of the French selection from the Bonner Wine Club, definitely have it if you can before the meal. You've understood it, I'm assuming here, that for your holiday celebrations you're having some kind of hearty or rich main dish. Dishes that are full of flavors and filling, which is really, to be honest, often the case. But of course, if you're having something different, then you'd have to adjust your wine choices accordingly, and we'll talk about it in a minute. If you're going for your roast, your rich stews, your, I don't know, your lasagna, whatever is the tradition in your family, well, the main is the time to unleash your bigger, bolder, and perhaps older wines too. So there's two approaches to matching or counterbalancing the rich flavors of a dish. If you've got a very generous plate, you can either try to match its power with a bold, spicy wine like a young Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot, a Bordeaux like this one, or like the Saint-Emilion that we sent you, a Zinfandel or a Rhone blend like the Telegram Châteauneuf-du-Pape that you also received from us. The other approach would be to try to cut through the richness of the dish with a more acidic or less heavy wine such as a Pinot Noir. But go for a slightly bigger type of Pinot Noir or Gamay than the ones that we talked about. So I would recommend go for a Napa or Sonoma Pinot Noir or a Burgundy Village, as I mentioned before, Vosne Romanée, Gevrey Chambertin, Nuit Saint-Georges, as just to name a few examples, or go for a Beaujolais Village. If you're going for Beaujolais, go for a Beaujolais Village like the delicious Moulin à Vent by Domaine Anita that we had in our club selections. So here really there's plenty of choices, alternatives, many choices than the ones that I've talked about, so feel free to explore. Just know that many classic European wine styles are very popular because they are a bit of an intermediary style between the bold and the lighter styles of wines, which is exactly why they are so popular, because they are so food friendly. So those are the Bordeaux from France, the Riojas from Spain, the Chiantis from Italy, the Barolos and the Barbarescos also from Italy, just to name a few. I'd also say that aged wines are great here with the mains as well. This is a 1995 Grand Cru from Claude Vougeot from Burgundy. They're fantastic. Aged wines are fantastic with mains because they're savory, they're more earthy, they're more spicy, so they go well with rich dishes, while they can be a little austere, a little dry, a little tough if you have them by themselves. But if you're going for an old lady of a wine, remember that video that I made about decanting? Remember that as a rule of thumb, putting a wine into a decanter for say half an hour, as a rule of thumb, half an hour before serving will do great, will do absolutely fabulous with most bigger, bolder and even more so older wines. Half an hour as a good rule of thumb will make your red wine better. So think about this, especially during the holidays. But of course, if you are having more mildly flavored dishes such as white meats, some not too roasted poultries or the fish, of course favor rich and round white wines like the Chardonnays, the Viogniers, the Marsanne, the Pinot Blancs. Gruner Veltliner from Austria is a very good if you've never tried this, it's excellent. It's round, it's soft, it's fruity. You can find some Soave or Gavi in Italy. I mean, there's loads and loads of options here. And my last point here is going to be that, of course, because you're thinking about your guests before yourself, always when you think about the holidays, right? Well, consider having a variety of options, plenty of options here. A rosé, a white wine, light white wine, a lighter red, a deeper red, and yeah, not everyone likes the old red wines as well. So it's good if you can to have different options, because we're all different, we all like different things. No one's right or wrong here as long as they are enjoying themselves. So think about having a variety of options for everyone to enjoy. Now, I personally find that wines for desserts are always a little bit complicated. Generally, by the time you get to the dessert, everyone is rather full and the taste buds are a little tired, a little saturated, a little too overwhelmed to really appreciate the wine. And that's when some, and perhaps many, would recommend serving the sweet wines, the ports, the sweet cherries, the muscats, or even sweet sparkling moscatos. You know, those sweet, sparkling, very fragrant moscatos from Italy. Where I live in the south of France, they make this Muscat de Noël. It's called Muscat de Noël. Understand the Christmas muscat, which is a sweet, fragrant muscat wine made from grapes that were picked just a couple of months ago. So those styles of the recognized styles of sweet wines do somewhat work for quite a lot of people. But personally, I find that the sugar on sugar, the sweet wine on sweet dessert to be a little bit too much for my taste, especially at the end of the meals. But maybe that's just me because I don't have a sweet tooth. I generally rather go on dessert with the acidity and the fizziness of sparkling wines for the cakes and other desserts to cut through the abundance of sugar. But again, the most important thing, don't bring out your fancy and complex champagne wine here with dessert, but consider simpler, more affordable alternative that everyone will enjoy just as much as this moment of the meal. And perhaps I'd say it's a good time maybe to bring out a rosé sparkling wine, something colorful, something exciting for everyone if you haven't served a rosé before the meal. Now, there are many fascinating sweet wines made around the world, particularly in Europe, that can be appreciated during or after the end of the meal. Many sweet European styles such as the Sauternes for Bordeaux, the Oloroso or Pedro Jimenez, those are types of sherry wines from Spain, the Vinsanto from Italy, aged ports from Portugal. All of those are incredibly complex sweet wines with very intense spicy flavors combined with some savoriness from being aged generally for a long time in oak. So I find they not too sweet, they're rather balanced because they're aged and they have this sort of savoriness, this spiciness that can go really, really well. So for those wines, I would say you can serve them with the dessert, have a little sip of them. I mean, that's how I like to enjoy them. I have a little sip of them with the cake, the dessert, whatever it is, to see whether it pairs well. And then I take my time after the meal to enjoy those complex ports, those aged ports, those complex sherries and those complex Sauternes wines, just like I would do with an aged whiskey or a cognac, for example. Serve it with the cake, with the dessert, and then take your time after while you're chatting with everyone and enjoying yourself at the end of the evening to enjoy those wines. But anyway, I think I've said enough. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope this has given you some indications, some ideas, excited your taste buds already at the holidays to come, and I hope you will find some good ideas, good suggestions that you can use during your holidays. I'll leave it here for today, and I'm be looking forward to see you soon with our next video next week in the wonderful world of the Bonner Wine Club's videos. See you next week. Au revoir. À bientôt. Santé. Cheers.